what has that been like for you? I mean, I think that you have you're an associate professor of history at NYU, New York University, and within the Latin American History Department, and you also are an abbot at Village Zendo. How do those two responsibilities kind of shake out on a day to day?
It's a juggling act, I have to say. It's been like this for a long time because the Zen practice has been a key part of my existence for a long time, and I've been teaching at NYU since 1996. So it's always negotiating that. Plus, I've a partner and family life, and so I feel like I'm juggling different balls and dropping them regularly and picking them up again. But I only became abbot at Village Endo last year, so this is a new phase in some ways. And I've also had the advantage of being on sabbatical this past academic year. So in September, I'm going to start up with my regular classes again at the university, and then we'll see what that's like doing the being the abbot at the Zendo and holding up the academic side. So I'm sure I'll be continuing to juggle a lot of things and dropping the ball and picking it up again.
Yeah, and I mentioned that that experience and thank you for sharing that because I think that like there's this pressure to always excel or always maintain and to acknowledge at least you acknowledging that you that the ball gets dropped every once in a while is just helpful for me because it just is uh it's a lot to maintain that expectation of yourself or maybe of other people. It's just nice to hear that, it's just sometimes you just get too busy and something falls through the cracks and it's just the way it
Oh,
goes.
constantly, constantly. We say in Zen, fall down 7 times, get up 8 times.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I like how it's that many times too. It's not just like when you fall down once or twice. It's like it happens.
Yes.
Well, that's wonderful. And I believe I heard that you say that like Zen has been a long time part of your life. I mean,
Mm.
did you grow up in a Zen household, or did you have that kind of early access growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area?
Yeah, I was born in San Francisco, but I grew up down the coast on the Monterey Peninsula. And I think that there was probably a subtle exposure that I wasn't even aware of growing up because you know how Northern California is. There's a historic Japanese presence on the West Coast, and so we grew up eating with chopsticks. And I don't know. I think there was just a kind of openness to all of this, but that was also really reinforced by the presence of San Francisco Zen Center that Shunryu Suzuki had setting up there. And also, he founded the Tassajara Monastery out in Carmel Valley, which is around where I grew up. I grew up at the mouth of Carmel Valley. And so these are things that were always on the map for me, even if I didn't exactly know what they were about. And I remember that I first came across Suzuki Roshi's book when I was a kid, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is, I think, still think the best introductory book to Zen. But I came across that when I was probably 13 or 14, and I picked it up at a book sale, and I certainly didn't understand it, but it drew me, the photograph of Suzuki Roshi and this beautiful calligraphy, and started reading that. And in high school, I met someone who said, you should think about doing some meditation. And so, yeah, I think I am one of the many beneficiaries of the fact that Suzuki Roshi came over from Japan and set up in Northern California, and that rippled out throughout the culture in Northern California. I was growing up in the 1970s, going to high school in the 1970s, and so discovered meditation in the 1970s. So my hat is off to Suzuki Roshi. Had a huge, huge impact for so many people. Yeah, even those of us who didn't end up at the San Francisco Zen Center, we were influenced by that.
Sure. Like I find that So I grew up in San Francisco, and I didn't know this for a while, but like a bookstore is oh my gosh, I'm just blanking on it now. But there's a bookstore on Fillmore,
Mm,
and they have like this whole Zen shelf there, and
right.
they have all sorts of things that are kind of these little branches of San Francisco Zen Center, kind of authors or other kind of figures, and it's just amazing to have that kind of part of the infrastructure of maybe some intellectual or otherwise
Yeah.
just bookstore kind of culture and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it's a really amazing. Um,
Yeah. I know
but
that bookstore. And I think that it is so interesting the way the cultural influence happens. It happens subtly in a lot of different ways. It's, people who might never have gone to San Francisco Zen Center and received a class in Zen meditation, they would have gotten Ed, Ed Brown's book, Tassajara baking book. They may have cooked from it, or the greens recipe book. And I think San Francisco Zen Center had lots of cultural influence in subtle ways through cuisine, for example, which was so in tune with what was going on in terms of the culinary revolution in Northern California. So I feel like we've been absorbing Asian and Buddhist cultural influence in Western United States for a long time. It's percolating through in ways we're not even aware of.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. My partner just picked up the Tassajara bread baking book,
Yeah.
and she's not particularly Buddhist or Zen focused, though she has an appreciation for it. And on the back, it's an older edition, but it has like some one of those like blurbs from the O magazine or Oprah's book club saying like this is a good book. And so it has that kind of like
Yeah.
it brought into the mainstream through different ways that are beyond specific Zen spaces. Oh, and I did think about it. Just shout out to browser books. That's what I was thinking of on Fillmore there. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then you went from being in the Carmel Valley and kind of having an exposure. Did that meditation component, whether or not it was specifically Zen Buddhist, or did that kind of further deepen in your college years or in your
Mm.
further academic study and in your travels?
Hmm. Yeah. So I started sitting it in high school. I found there was a teacher who helped make that transition for me. But there wasn't actually any place to go get hands-on meditation instruction. I actually didn't go out to Tassajara. That was seemed kind of remote to me, and I probably was also a little allergic to organized religion when I was in high school. But something really spoke to me about the meditation practice of it. I remember on the Monterey Peninsula in those days, the only place you could go to get some meditation instruction was TM, transcendental meditation. That didn't really appeal to me so much, so I didn't end up going there. So I had some really basic instruction, and I just did it on my own. And I read Suzuki Roshi, and I did my own thing. And again, I think that was also part of the zeitgeist that it was. Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the New Age atmosphere was also percolating through Northern California at the time. Esalen was just down the coast from where I was. I wasn't really into the New Age scene that much, but meditation was something that seemed like a not such a strange thing to do. So, and I just did it on my own, and I really wasn't looking for organized religion or to join a church or a Buddhist group. So I had that going all along. I went to college at Berkeley, um, and I did find some other folks to sit with one summer. I remember finding out about a little sitting group in the Berkeley Hills, and it was being led by Jack and Vicky Shoemaker, who had Counterpoint Press, this great uh, literary press that was also publishing some Zen work, and they were connected with Gary Snyder, who was up in the Sierra foothills, uh, and I think they were also connected with Robert Aitken Roshi, who was based in Hawaii. But I joined this little sitting group in the Berkeley Hills, and we would sit in back of Jack and Vicky's house in a little cabin, which I learned was where Gary Snyder used to hang out and live when he was coming to town. And we had a sweet little sitting group there. That was really the first time I was doing it with other folks. And then we would have tea and cookies afterwards if the raccoons hadn't raided our cookie stash during the sitting. Yeah,
Wow. What a special historic when you think about it, like
yeah,
in the history of Bay Area Zen, San Francisco Bay Area Zen,
yeah,
that's a pretty remarkable place to have some of your first sitting in community
yeah.
experiences. And did that what did that do when I don't know if you're kind of remember that feeling, but going from doing meditation on your own, whether it was in your home or wherever you found that space, uh, to sitting in community,
Mm,
uh, did that kind of bring a different element that you really enjoyed, that you kind of wanted to continue having experiences like when you would meditate, you'd kind of be drawn towards community, or did it feel
mm,
kind of like, oh, this is a nice flavor to add to my more isolated, my solitary sitting?
mm. Yeah, I did enjoy that sitting with other folks that summer, and it took me a while though to, I think, overcome my allergy to organized religion. And so I continued sitting on my own for the most part. I I moved down to LA for a little while. My partner was in graduate school down there, but I didn't find the Los Angeles Zen Center of Los Angeles. And then I ended up going to graduate school myself to study Latin American history and that was in Madison, Wisconsin. Um, and then I went down to Bolivia with my partner, and we were doing research and lived down there for a number of years. And it was down there actually that I really started to develop a community practice. And what happened is that I went to the house of a guy I knew down there who was Spanish. And I saw in his living room on his sofa, he had a zafu, which is the meditation cushion we use in Zen. And I looked at that and said, "Hey, do you do this too?" And he said, "Yeah, I do this too. You want to do it together?" So he and I started sitting together in the mornings in La Paz. And then he said, "My teacher from Spain is coming for a visit. And uh, you want to meet her?" I said, "Yeah." So she came and she said, "Wow, I really like it here. Why don't we get something started? Why don't we start a group?" So she went back to Spain to prepare for her return. And then this friend, Ignacio, and I took a warehouse that was on his property, kind of a not much used, and we did a bunch of work on it and converted it into a Zendo. And then we invited some other folks to start sitting with us, and um, this his teacher, a nun was French from a French Zen group led by um, Deshimaru Roshi. So she was French herself. She'd studied with Deshimaru Roshi. She moved to Spain, then she moved to Bolivia, and she kind of oversaw the practice there. And that's where I really started practicing with other people, and it was transformative for me.
Yeah. And that's what an incredible story too, where you just kind of
Mm,
were in this the personal space in their house, and you
mm,
see like something that is like an object of that you
yeah,
recognize,
yeah,
and there you were, at one point you were sitting by yourself in the Carmel Valley, and then there you are now in the setting up a warehouse to reconvert it into a Zendo sitting
yeah.
group.
that was the irony, crazy irony that I grew up, 10 miles from Tasahara, but I had to go to Bolivia before I actually started doing it with other people.
Yeah.
I'm
Wow.
kind of slow, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, I think you just needed that whatever it is. I mean, like that connection that you had, and also too. I mean, like it sounds like it was part of your research, and maybe you and your partner's research in that region. But Bolivian history, political history, and revolution, and everything that all the things that you are bringing to your expertise that you're bringing to your work right now at NYU, it seems like it's a really rich place for you in the way that you connect to it. I mean, it seems like a very important place for you. And I don't know a whole lot about Bolivia really at all, but just in preparation for our conversation, I had to just do a little quick things. It's the highest capital city in the world.
Yep.
I think Denver is a mile high, and La Paz is about double that, a little bit more than double that in
Right.
height. And it's kind of hard to really imagine that, like just with being there. Like, what is it like to go there to visit, but also to live there extend for extended periods of time?
Mm. Yeah. It's a pretty spectacular place. I first arrived there in 1984 as a backpacker, and I was fascinated and hooked, and I think I was really drawn to the landscapes. This is high elevation. La Paz is around 12,000 feet, 4,000 meters. Spectacular views of the Andean mountain range. Lake Titicaca is this extraordinary vast lake out on the surface of the high plateau. Um, and there are really dramatic canyons that drop down from the high plateau into the Amazon basin, that so you can go from very dry, austere, desert-like high elevations down into subtropical and then tropical lowlands. And so landscapes are spectacular. It's also demographically one of the most indigenous places in the Americas. It might be the highest per capita indigenous population in the Americas. In the early 21st century, nearly two-thirds of the population identified with one or another indigenous groups. And uh, many people speak indigenous languages. And so this is also fascinating for me, something that I'd never encountered before growing up in a place like the United States. And I'd been traveling around Latin America and I'd never seen the likes of it. So that was powerful. And then also I got there in 1984, which was a time of deep economic and political crisis. And there was hyperinflation, one of the highest world historical inflation rates, protests, powerful protests in the streets every day. I had no idea what was going on, but it really fascinated me. And I felt this um, desire to understand it, but there was also something kind of subtle, some kind of attraction to the place that is a little hard to put to words.
Yeah. I mean, the natural beauty that you were talking about, I mean, to have that drastic of a change, especially
Mm,
given the elevation to go from these high desert plain lakes and mountains and snow-capped mountains, and you can see some
yeah.
pictures like people have like full on like parkas and the hiking sticks and everything, and then you also have going down into the lowlands to have subtropical tropical climate. It's pretty amazing to have, and then too, like that energy that you're talking about, like to have
Mm,
arrived in the mid 80s when there was a lot going on, but especially not just that kind of political environment, but also the population being at one point, maybe even today, identifying as two-thirds of the population identifying as related or connected to indigenous culture. That type of
mm,
political environment is different and
yeah.
unique. And and I know that like just from your biography on NYU, there is you have an interest in Native American
Right.
culture here, and I'd imagine some of that work having to do with politics, but is there something that you have taken from your experiences observing the political revolutions and the different uh, flows of how policies are put into place and the different kind of energies that are about uh, in politics in Bolivia, how that has kind of framed some things that are going on in America, or like especially within
Mm,
indigenous populations here
mm,
in America?
mm. It's interesting. I guess one of the things that's so striking to me about politics in Bolivia is that Bolivia is a place where there is deep poverty. Um, And yet there's also very powerful forms of political expression and political protest. And the reason why it's so powerful is because of I think, the deep roots in the forms of community organization. People are, you can't really survive in Bolivia if you have a completely individualized existence. You survive because you have family and kin and community ties. And those are the things that constitute the resources, economic and political and personal, that allow you to weather deep crises and allow you to mobilize in powerful ways. So that that's always been powerful for me to see. And I think it's something that is maybe that we don't grow up with so much in this country, the same kind of communal and collective relationships. But I do feel there's a yearning for that kind of collectivity on the part of many people who may feel alienated within this society, or who are looking for some kind of change and want to be part of some kind of change. They will look for collective spaces to do that, which could be from uh, traditional political party or union forms of organization to other kinds of anarchist and mutual aid associations. And, we all know even the experience of being in the streets with a multitude of people is transformative. So that's an interesting thing to look at, that our individual existence and our collective existence and the ways in which those play out in the United States and play out in times of crisis and in times of political mobilization.
Certainly. And thank you for going into that. I know that was kind of like a big question, that there's like a
Mm,
lot to kind of address in that. So thank you for
mm,
offering that. And it's a really wonderful insight as far as like the how how the population of Bolivia largely has that kind of kinship, that
mm,
kind of community, and that family and that
mm,
connection. And it's beyond just being a relative. Is there's a
mm,
like you to help weather the crises that as they
mm,
come. It's important to have community, and
mm.
it's hard to be just an isolated person
Yeah,
existing there.
yeah.
And I don't know if there is a large Christian influence in Bolivia, but I imagine there is a connection to indigenous faith traditions also, that's a part of life there.
Mm.
Did starting and establishing a Zendo in Bolivia come with some judgment, or was it pretty smooth and easy, or did some people that are participating in that there did they experience some sort of isolation because of their interest in doing something different?
Yeah. Um, so Bolivia has been primarily Catholic ever since Spaniards arrived and began evangelizing in the 16th century. So it's very deeply rooted, hundreds of years. But, and then of course, there's been more recent evangelical Protestant turn in the 20th century. But you're absolutely right that there are also traditional Andean forms of spirituality and ritual life that have also survived in spite of the attempts to extirpate native religion on the part of um, Christian groups up to the present. So that's in terms of culture and in terms of religion, it is actually multicultural, we could say. And Buddhism is something that is very novel in that context. I mean, there was no Buddhism before we started the Zen Center in Bolivia in the 1990s. I think some of the folks who were drawn to it are people who felt like they didn't have an outlet for contemplative practice within traditional Catholicism or or Protestantism. So that's an appeal. The meditation practice is appealing for people who may feel like they never had access to that kind of contemplative possibility. And at the same time, it would be seen as something exotic, or within some more traditional sectors of the church, even maybe demonic, right? Certainly not difficult to make sense of. I remember one of the members in our group early on, he was a principal of a school, and that was a Catholic school. But he was so taken with the meditation practice, he decided to offer it to the students, the kids in his school. These are middle schoolers through high schoolers. And he said, I'll even give you extra credit if you come and do meditation for before classes start. And actually, a lot of kids came. I remember being at his school in the mornings. They had to get up earlier, an hour earlier, to come to class and do that. I don't think you do that just for extra credit. I remember once there were nearly 3 dozen kids in this chapel that he had set up for the purposes of meditating. And it was amazing to see kids, 14, 15 years old, sitting in Zazen posture. But the nuns who were in charge of that school, when they got wind of it, were not happy that there was a Buddha on the altar in there, and the whole thing sounded a little scary to them. And so there's that side of it too, culturally, some lack of understanding culturally. But we were talking earlier on about how um, Asian culture, Buddhist culture has infused North America, but it's also transformed the context. The North American context has also transformed Buddhism. So Buddhism looks different in the United States in some ways, and I think it will look different in Latin America and in Bolivia, um, over the generations. And one of the interesting things I think is that there are elements of native Andean spirituality that are going to get fused into the practice. So our Zen Center in Bolivia is called the Phajjsi Jalsu Zen Center, which is a native Aymara term, which means the full moon rises over the mountain. And there are lots of different ways in which Andean spirituality has worked its way into the Zen forms and ceremonies and so forth that we do in Bolivia.
And before I get into discussing like the way that has been blending within your Zen Center in Bolivia, but thank you for being, the sensitivity of just understanding that when Zen has traveled, it
Mm.
is informing and being informed
Yeah,
by its context,
yeah,
and to for me to reflect on how, I see a lot of things from a North American lens, and to be like, oh yeah, like, well, like as Buddhism enters Latin America and even specific regions within Latin America, it's gonna have that exchange that
yeah,
happens, and it'll manifest in a different way. So
yeah,
um I mean, it sounds fascinating at the same time,
yeah.
what will come, what will manifest.
We will see. Yeah,
Yeah, but you're kind of, as far as I know, within Bolivian experiences with Buddhism. You have been on a frontier, so to speak. I mean, just like I don't know how many Zen centers were in existent now within Bolivia, but also too just when you were founding yours. And uh, I know that the name of the Zen Center has a full moon or a rising moon or a full moon as part of it. And I know that with my uh, understanding of Zen story and metaphor and teaching tools, a moon and a full moon are really important. I mean, like there are certain things like atonement ceremonies that happen within cycles of
Mm,
the moon, and various other ritual elements, and just poetry and different expressions that happen within a Zen context. Has the moon played a role within what you understand to have that it plays in Andean religion and faith traditions?
mm,
Is there some like a lot of uh, shared understandings and symbolisms that you find?
mm. Yeah, actually, in the so Phajjsi Jalsu, the name of the Zendo is an Aymara term, and in Aymara, there are different terms for the different phases of the moon that probably exist in U.S. farming culture too, but which I don't know. But I certainly didn't grow up with that kind of subtlety in my awareness of the moon and its cycles. So we have waxing and waning and full moon and crescent moon. That's about it. But the Aymara as a farming agricultural um, civilization are very attuned to the cycles of the moon, obviously for cultivation um, and so so Paxi is the term for the full moon. And um, I think, another one of the things about living in a place like Bolivia in contrast to a place like New York City is you're always aware of the moon because things are not so built up. I mean, even in the capital city of La Paz, it was when I first moved there, was living there in the 90s, it was not that built up. You could be aware what phase the moon was in, you know, throughout the month. You would be following it and you'd be seeing it shifting across the mountain range. And it was the name for Zendo came from having walked out of Zazen one evening and looked up and seen that the great Mount Ilimani, which is, I think, close to 20,000 feet, had this full moon that was sitting right on top of it. And it looked like a person in Zazen because the moon was shining bright from behind the mountain, and the mountain was in the shadow of it, but it had this form like a person sitting in meditation, this black kind of um, triangular form with this big head sitting on top of it, which is fully illuminated. And it was a powerful thing to see. Of course, as you're saying, that the full moon represents enlightenment in Asian tradition. But that wasn't just a literary figure, it was an actual visual experience that gave rise to it. Whereas here in New York City, I walk the streets and I often don't know what phase we're in. Is it waxing? Is it waning? You might get lucky once in a while and see down the avenue between the lines of skyscrapers where it's at. But so much of the time, I miss the moon.
Certainly, yeah. I lived in Brooklyn for about 8 years, and it's a very
Uh,
similar. I know what you're saying
yeah.
because if it's not cloudy and all that kind of stuff too, that plays a role. But yeah, there's just so many tall buildings. But then every once in a while, I find like there's this one very special gap in Manhattan. It's like maybe like 22nd Street and like Broadway or something. And there's one lot that has no skyscraper in it, and I would walk down and you can see like a perfect view of the Empire State Building,
Hmm.
and you're just like, oh wow, like that's where I am, like that's what
Yeah.
I see. And then sometimes there's a moon that's kind of like in
Yeah.
in that area too.
Yeah.
it could be a great rooting experience, but that's to say that often I don't feel very rooted if I don't see the
Yeah.
moon. And of course, now being located in the San Francisco Bay Area, fog is usually covered. I
Right.
usually can't see a whole lot of
Right.
anything. But to have that kind of really high altitude, I would imagine kind of clear, dry air, the moon
Exactly.
is able to
Yeah.
be
It's
seen.
very sharp, very sharp.
Yeah,
At that altitude, it's very vivid at that
yeah.
altitude. Um,
It
so we have to, when we're living in the city, we have to learn to be aware of the moon within ourselves if we can't see it up above
Yeah, and as we wax and wane, and as
as
we,
we wax and wane.
yeah, and just I don't want to get into New York, but that visual is so powerful. What
Mm,
you're saying, and to have it come into union as one image, but to know that there are two different
mm,
elements. It's like the Earth
yeah,
and then the Moon, and this
yeah,
it's just a really, and yeah, it's not permanent either. It's just like a thing
no,
that
just,
continues. It's fat. It's awesome, and especially for
yeah,
that to have met you after you came out of a
yeah,
meditation, after a zazen.
yeah,
Very powerful image
yeah,
indeed. And then so you lived and researched in Bolivia for a while, and then I think in '98 you found yourself in the Village Zendo uh, community. I think, or maybe around then. Uh,
right.
how did you how did you start finding a basis, or like maybe a community in New York for zazen?
Yeah. So I finished the dissertation in on Bolivian history, and I ended up getting a job at NYU. Um, and I moved to New York City, and sorry, I moved to New York City in 1996. And at that point, because I'd been practicing in Bolivia, um, this was an important thing for me. So it was a big question of how I'm going to practice now that I'm in New York City. And I'd heard about different Zen centers that existed in New York City, and I really didn't feel like going shopping. It just didn't feel right to me to go shopping. So I just sat in my living room for a year. And then at a certain point, I realized I was getting so dry. I could feel it in my body. I was just getting dry, doing it on my own. And I knew that I needed to find uh, other people to practice with. So I just went to the place that was closest by. It was right in the neighborhood. It was just 2 blocks away from where I was living. And it was the living room of Pat Enki O'Hara and Joshin O'Hara, the co-founders of the Village Zendo. And I wandered in, and they were sitting in their living room, and I started sitting with them. And uh, that's been it for me. I've been with the Village Zendo ever since, but it's not because I said this place is better than that place, and I did a whole analysis, cost benefit analysis. It just was what was there and available, and so I went with it, and I'm very happy I did.
Yeah, and and it's great that you had that experience of like, well, I'll practice on my own, and I won't make it a thing. I'll make sure that the different factors are in alignment and at the right time for me to make
Mm,
a move. And it kind of came out of like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm like
mm,
drying out. Like I'm not feeling as fulfilled from this.
mm,
And yet you still had that um commitment to maintaining your practice in a solitary way anyway. But yeah, the being driven to that. And this is something that I kind of come across as I read about, especially the earlier days of Zen in North America, especially in California. But a lot of there are a lot of stories, it feels like, that start in someone's living room, or start in
mm,
someone's house, or someone's
mm,
in some sort of like a uh, repurposed room that is not a center, like an established center that has different like breakout rooms, or different like things like that are a little more established and a little bit more like prepared.
mm,
And I I was just wondering if you have any kind of advice for somebody who is
Mm.
interested in Zen and maybe they live in a place that doesn't have an established brick and mortar Zendo
Yeah,
temple or anything. And
yeah,
but there is a sitting group, and there is a sitting group that happens at John's house, or it happens at a park or something like that.
yeah.
But they want to have the security, and they want to have the sense of establishedness about it. Like how would you kind of advise somebody that wants to kind of walk that
Yeah.
and make a commitment? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different paths and they're all valid. Um, but that was my story too. I was on my own and it was more, I suppose, my own choice to be on my own for a long time. But I would encourage anybody to try out sitting with other people, see what that's like to do it with other people. I think, really different and really beneficial. If you're just practicing on your own, you tend to be much more in control of what's going on. I'm going to practice now. I'm not going to practice then. I'm going to practice for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to be watching the clock to determine when I feel like I'm going to stop. So you're in charge, which is actually not the best thing for one's practice. It's better when you can let go of the control. And so if you have other people to practice with, you're not so much in control. You can have someone else watch the clock, um, and you can just be with the structure that exists. So it's very good. Um, I have a lot of fondness for small sitting groups because I've been a part of them myself. For many, many years, we've been trying to cultivate a small group in Bolivia. When I came to Village Zendo in New York City, it was also pretty small, living room sitting group. Um, it's very sweet, and I love it because there are not so many trappings, and they tend to be less hierarchical and institutionalized. And the people who do that are really there for the sitting, which is the heart of it all.
Mm.
So if you have the chance to be part of a small sitting group, there are going to be frustrations, there are going to be inconveniences, but um, I hope you can also appreciate how special it is that you have people who are just coming together just to sit together, just to be present together. It's not about robes, it's not about chants and bells and whistles. It's just pure. It's very pure practice. So that's something very valuable. And if it's available to you, even if it's just a small local group. And of course, nowadays we have another option which never existed a decade ago, but now you can hook up with other groups online. This has been a revolutionary. Um, it's transformed things to be able to sit with, and here at Village Zendo, we have morning and evening online practice to go with the in-person practice at the Zendo. And this has been wonderful. It's brought us so many new people, and so many new people have found an anchor that they didn't have before. And sometimes that can lead to really good results. So we just got back from 2 weeks of retreat, and there were a number of people there who found us through online practice, but who managed to make a link. So maybe they're not going to be able to be coming to the Zendo New York City, but they can join us for a retreat during the summer or in the winter. And this is really a fantastic opportunity. And I encourage, it's not the same thing as sitting together with people in person. It's not the same time. I have met Zen teachers who refuse to do it because they think it's kind of degraded or something. But I think that it can be a really valuable support. Um, I'm not saying it's the same as sitting in person with other people, but it can be a really valuable support.
Yeah. And two, for anyone that's like, I guess, curious too, like they're just beginning, they might be like, well, I don't know what sitting Zazen is. They could watch it. They could
Yeah,
participate from a distance and feel safe, and then
yeah,
make that decision to enter another time. And I feel like also too, a wonderful thing about it is if you're if your life schedule is such, and oh, I can't do any evening practices with my local temple here, or I can't sit at
mm,
that time because I have to do this, that, and the other thing, but by this time, I can link up with someone on a different time zone, and I can, well, that time zone, it's 6 a.m. For them or for me, and it's 9 there, and that's when they do it. So that works for me. So I can link up in that way. So yeah, there is something very powerful about and revolutionary about
yeah.
having that online community. Uh, and then
It's
and now,
also been, I can say, it's been great for me personally because I now sit with the Bolivian Sangha every Saturday morning online. They're meeting at the Zendo, and I and some of the other New Yorkers are joining them online, and there are also some Bolivians online. And so I actually have more steady contact with the Bolivian Zen community than was the case before this. So,
yeah. No, that's amazing. And yeah, and then and to have and to be able to sustain like the both centers can sustain. I mean, like the Village Zendo here, you can be have a
mm,
physical presence more often, and then when you are online, you can maintain that until you go back to visit in Bolivia. And just as far as like the establishment element goes, because I think now the Village Zendo is based in the American Thread building. Uh,
yes.
which is I looked on Google Maps is very close to the Ghostbusters headquarters, which is very cool. The Hook and Ladder, I think, and it's a really beautiful part of town. It looks like a very beautiful building. It looks like an old kind of historic building. What has
Yeah.
it been like to go into to that space, and also to what has your experience been like? Because I think that we're just a few months over your 1 year anniversary as being Abbot.
Right.
What has those experiences been like?
Yeah, we survived the pandemic, which was miraculous. There were many Dharma centers that had to close their doors, couldn't keep up with the rent. Somehow we managed, but there were fortuitous circumstances in that our teacher, Enki O'Hara, found this space in the American Thread building, which was being offered for a nonprofit organization. It's actually a space that had been occupied by a Tibetan Buddhist group for many years. And it was coming open, and we expressed interest, and they were happy to have us. This was fantastic good fortune for us also because we are now paying a third of the rent of what we used to pay. We've been in the Greenwich Village neighborhood for a long time, but this new space is down in Tribeca, and it is a historic building. It used to be a thread factory. And so we're in good shape now financially. And Enkyo Roshi, our co-founder who led us for 40 years, just stepped down officially as abbot last spring, and asked me to step in, which I'm trying my best to do. Um, so it's a big transition for us. But she left us in such good position. We have a healthy community, and as I said, financially, we're now, I think, in good shape for the foreseeable future. And for me, it's been remarkably easy, I have to say, because um, we're not facing some big crisis, moral or political or financial. Our community is wonderful, and it's really a joy for me to be doing the work to support the community. And I'm very clear that I'm not going to fill her shoes. So um, it's my job to really just try to have the big picture and make sure that the different pieces are working together. And it's really about the community. we had a great teacher leading us for 40 years, building all this up. And now I think um, it's time for the community just to, Thich Nhat Hanh had that line about the next Buddha will be Sangha, will be community. And I feel like that's where we're at. We don't need some uh, great charismatic leader. We need just the community is really can express itself, and it's my job to try to support the community.
Yeah. Well, that's a wonderful um w- like piece to look at with like that quote from Thich Nhat Hanh where the next Buddha is the Sangha, and kind of appreciating what your teacher had done to
Mm,
set you all up with such leave you in such good hands and good footing, and and then to also like appreciate that those shoes aren't going to be filled in that same way, but also too that knowing that now the community can really come into its own and can connect and uh offer things to itself
mhm,
and and reach out and maybe inspire or help others, but there's this like sustaining quality that is, I mean, it's so hard to craft. And so uh, Enkyo Roshi, having done all of that, is incredible
yeah.
with their co-founder. And no, that's amazing. And I'm really glad to hear. I'm really glad that that's the state of things, and that your sangha was able to survive such an unprecedented time, and when other people and other maybe Zen centers throughout the country and the world were having a difficult time. So I'm really happy to hear
Mhm,
about that.
yeah.
And uh, what is the retreat experience like? Going from being in the city
Mm.
where there's a lot of hustle and bustle, and I don't know if you go to the Garrison Institute. I don't know if that's where a lot of the retreats happen, but what is it like to go? It sounds like maybe elsewhere to be in community with other people, or do the retreats happen in the city itself?
Yeah, we have been going to a place called Wisdom House for many years. We used to go there for winter retreats, and now we're going there for summer retreats. It's it's a retreat center that was a former training center for an order of Catholic nuns, Sisters of Wisdom. But curiously, historically, it had an important role to play in some of the first Zen retreats in the country, is my understanding that some of the formative Zen teachers who came to the United States, like Yasutani Roshi and so on Nakagawa, were there for retreats back in the 60s or 70s. So there is that long connection. And then currently we are going to the Garrison Center, which again used to be started out as a Capuchin Catholic monastic training center, and then it was became a Tibetan Buddhist temple, and now it's a retreat center. And so we're going there in the winter time. Um, and so it's very important for us to have that time of residential practice together. When you're in community, living together, seeing each other night and day, it's different from going to the Zendo once a week or a few times a week. It's more challenging because you're really bumping up against your fellow Dharma brothers and sisters. And so it's really important complement to the kind of everyday practice that we might do in our living room or even at a Zen center to have that. And you can also go very deep in a week or 2 weeks, or we used to do month-long retreats. So that's a really important complement. And the other part of it is that Enkyo Roshi was very clear from the beginning that she didn't want to set up a monastery out in the mountains somewhere where everything would be quiet and beautiful. She wanted to offer the Dharma in the heart of New York City, in this incredibly busy, complicated, contradictory, conflict-ridden place, to offer people with modern, hectic, and challenging lives, to offer the Dharma here in the midst of all of this. Um, It's a beautiful vision, and it's the one that we are continuing to try to sustain. Um, so that's the heart of it for us. When someone asked Enkyo Roshi once, "What is your practice?" and she said, "Manhattan." But this is really the heart of it for us, but it's a really valuable complement to go away and do residential retreats and go in depth for periods of time, and then come back to our daily lives with our partners and family members and jobs and juggling all the balls that we were talking about before. That's really where it's at, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Um, I certainly appreciate like taking that space and time to be elsewhere. And I feel like just like being elsewhere, even just for a little bit, just gives you a different orientation, and then that kind of maybe develops a different kind of appreciation or a different it allows you kind of to come back, and you can maybe approach that place where you are all the time in a different way, and that can kind of resettle you in another way. But I also really enjoy practice as being Manhattan because uh, having been on the subway a lot and walked around Manhattan a ton, there's a lot of opportunity for bumping into people. And the American Thread Building, I think, is really close to Canal Street, and that's like no
Yes,
joke. That's like a that's like a
it, it's right
serious
on Canal
stretch.
Street. Yeah.
Yeah, so I fully appreciate that. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I just wanted to offer two more like smaller questions, but one is if you have anything that you'd like to promote, and
Mm.
just to offer some things here. For more information about the Zen Center in Bolivia, you can check out zenbolivia.org. There's also Village Zendo in New York, and then some of the as a historian, as a scholar, you have some books that are available both in Spanish and English. The books in English are "We Alone Will Rule Native Indian Politics in the Age of We Alone Will Rule Native Indian Politics in the Age of Insurgency." There is Revolutionary Horizons, Past and Present in Bolivian Politics. And then you also have co-edited the Bolivia Reader, History, Culture, Politics. I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to share, but we'd love to hear it.
Um, I guess I would just put in a plug for Vincent Moore's podcast. Since he was plugging me, I would plug him back and recommend checking out some of his other podcasts. And it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate what you're doing with this. I think it's wonderful to see how people come to practice in all of these infinitely different ways. And there's no right way to do it. Everyone is going to do it in their own way based on their own past and their own suffering and their own aspiration for freedom.
Well, wow, I've never been replugged before, but thank you, thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for the plug, Vincent.
I appreciate that. That was very kind. But do heed those words. Please check out my podcast and please share it as much as possible. And then for the last question, is there any advice that you'd like to offer anybody that is walking the Buddhist path that you would have wanted to have heard as you were kind of navigating it earlier on?
Mm. Mm. Um, yeah, as I said, for me, Suzuki Roshi's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, was really like a doorway, and that opened up a lot for me. And I still think it's the best book out there. But in a way, the best book or the best sutra and the best reference is just um, your own heart. It's listening to yourself and reading yourself and seeing where you can find a doorway in the circumstances that are really right at hand for you in your neighborhood, in your town. You don't have to aspire to, find the most fantastic, charismatic teacher out there. You just need to work with the ingredients that you have. And so, we have so many challenges nowadays on so many different fronts: existential, psychological, political, economic. I think practice is more important than ever, and that the teachings are more important than ever, and community is more important than ever. But it really starts with looking to yourself, and it's it's not out there somewhere else. It's really actually very close at hand.
Shinryu Roshi, thank you so much for
My
speaking with
pleasure,
me.
Vincent.
That was such a beautiful thing to end with as well. And thank you so much for offering so much of your time, but also for having such interesting insights and
Mm.
for having such an adventurous life and having uh, it's just amazing the way that you have traveled the world and experienced so much and brought so much with you and shared so much. So thank you for
Thank you
everything.
for the invitation
Of course.
and for putting uh, us in contact and for putting lots of other folks in contact. It's really wonderful to see what you're doing.